It's May the 13th, 2026, and you know why you're here, so let's kick this off right and introduce the players. Hey, I'm Jarosar. I'm going to call myself a WoW esports aficionado again today.
Very nice. My name is Big Moran, and I'm definitely not part of the RMP cabal.
And hey, I'm Treesap Jake, and in some circles, I'm known as Sexy Moses.
What?
Yeah. Anyway, RMP Cabal. Moving swiftly on.
Yes.
Oh my goodness.
Actually, I misspoke. It was the RMP cartel. There's a distinction between the cartel and the cabal. The cartel is European. The cabal is North American. Just some regional differences. Some more regional differences.
So I've got a question then. Who's better? Is the cartel or the cabal better? That's the question.
By suggestion of my lawyer, I am not inclined to answer that question out of fear for my life. But,
True. Oh dear.
Considering what cartels are known to do in Mexico, I would say a cabal is probably better than a cartel.
Oh, you're worried about drug cartels. Let me tell you about the RMP cartel. Like they, like one of them takes your kidney, the other one kidney shots you multiple times. Like which is worse? Which fate is worse? We don't know.
I mean, after a kidney shot, you only piss blood for a week, and then you're good to go, right? So,
That's what I've heard.
So here's a question for you guys, though. So this is something I was talking to an RL buddy at work. He used to play World of Warcraft, and he was asking me how it is. And I've been finding myself like already this season just kind of like, like the start of Midnight was kind of fun. The lore of the story, doing the questing, that was fun. A little bit of that initial chaos of learning specs and, you know, while we settle into the meta and that. But now like, I'm just not feeling it. Like I'm probably going to level some more characters now that it's as a time walking week again, and makes it really easy. But I don't know. Like, have you guys found it like a struggle to log in lately?
I won't lie to you, Gerasar. This is the first time I've logged in today in about 3 weeks, and I think the truth of the matter is, I've been speaking to a lot of people about this, other PvPers in Europe, that there is just a general consensus from some people that it's just a bit boring, kind of with the way that it's been balanced and the way that the nerfs swing, and that this sort of mage rogue dominance is allowed to basically continue, and anything that gets a little bit close gets shot out from like as it passes close to the sun, the wax melts because the sun itself is run by rogue mage players. So that's kind of the sentiment that I've gotten from some people, but it's definitely something that I feel for sure. Like I love WoW, and I love WoW PvP, and obviously I spend a lot of time dedicating myself to trying to find a way to improve what we go through.
Mm-hmm.
But I myself have become very disillusioned with the game state at the minute. Like I'm exactly the same as you. I really enjoyed the start of Midnight, but there has come a point where I don't want to log on and just not have fun. Like it's almost come to the point where I'm sort of like, should I just do PvE at this point? Should I just do M+ and maybe a bit of raiding to enjoy the game? But I think there's nothing drawing me back in, and even this MMR booster that's apparently gone in, it doesn't really feel like it's going to do much. I'm kind of waiting to see.
So I think the MMR boost is going to help, because now it's going to pull the rank ones out of the 2100 bracket, right, and out of the 1900 bracket. So then people are going to stop bashing their heads against that wall, while the rank ones are actually probably going to play now, because they're going to stop bashing their heads against the invisible wall of MMR capping, at least until they get to 23, and then, or I guess what's the max right now? At 25, I think I saw in Shuffle.
Yeah, I think it's around 2,500.
Yeah. So I don't know. Like I think that's going to help at least a little bit, and that people aren't going to feel so stuck. But I don't know. And honestly, I have to admit, like I'm just doing unrated PvP, so the whole RMP cabal or RMD cabal thing that's going on isn't affecting as bad, but it's still frustrating. So what about you? What about you, Big? How are you doing for logging in and enjoying the game?
I mean, I'm having fun. I think what helped me most recently was the fact that I leveled and geared my rogue, and I've been queuing my rogue a lot more. And I think that's maybe why a lot of people are feeling burnt out, because leveling an alt and gearing an alt is kind of tedious right now. I mean, in previous expansions, you could maybe get level boosted. You know, you pay a WoW token and then you AFK for an hour and then you're max level. But now you kind of have to go through all the motions and do time walking if you don't a quest. But I think I was getting a bit burnt out on Boomy. Mm-hmm. And so I decided, okay, I'm just going to level my rogue. This was during the mop time walking. So I leveled my rogue, geared it up, and that's who I've been playing the most over the past few days. And I'm having fun, and I would like to level more alt. And I think that's always, to me, the solution for getting bored in this game is just level an alt or play an alt. And I think that's just been kind of hard to do so far. But Conquest is going to be uncapped soon. And so that means Conquest boxes should be coming soon. And when that happens, gearing an alt will be much quicker. So I think we'll all maybe experience less burnout if we play alts.
Yeah. I mean, there's a couple times when I was burnt out and I just did PvE, or I even got into pet battling. That was fun. And that took that gave me something new to learn, something new to do. It's funny you mentioned the Conquest cap though, because we're only at week 8. I'm pretty sure it's week 13 that we're going to, right?
I've seen like multiple pieces of information, like maybe week 11 that it's going to be uncapped. I don't know. I've heard multiple things, but whenever that happens, I mean, that makes the alt gearing process significantly easier. Right now is really, really hard to gear up an alt. Because I just did it for my rogue, and I think right now the Conquest cap is 8K, roughly, somewhere around 8K.
Yeah,
78. And that takes, like, I'm not even joking, like over 200 shuffle wins to completely cap that. So that's a pretty long journey. Mm-hmm. And of course, it doesn't feel good when you queue shuffle or queue any rated PvP and you're under geared.
Yeah,
that feeling really sucks. So I really, I think Venruki was talking about this earlier today on stream. It's like, well, there should be some sort of catch-up system for this early start of the season. Like maybe the amount of conquest you get per win is increased, just because, it just feels so crazy to grind out all that conquest from zero.
Yeah.
I always I use twos. So when I'm gearing up, either I do a little bit of threes, but mostly twos to get myself all the gear that I need, or at least close to. And then I jump into threes. And I've always found that works really well, because twos is a bracket I don't really care about. If I'm playing a class that kind of works in twos, then great. That's fine with me. And I don't mind doing it. Like, I think that's sort of an area where you can start to learn more about your spec. And I've always said, if you do double DPS twos, that's where you really learn how to live.
That puts hair on your back.
Legit, yeah. Hair on your chest. You learn when to press your defensive cooldowns and everything like that, and it's wild, especially if you're on a class that does not do well in double DPS, for example, like Demo Lock. That is the worst thing you could ever do. However, it can still work, and you just learn ways to kind of do damage and use defenses and stuff like that, unless you're queue into something like a BM Hunter who literally just stands behind a pillar and destroys you anyway. But into most classes it's fun.
Maybe I should do that. That's something I actually struggled with recently. Big, we were talking about that when we were doing when I was helping you out with the whole Demo Lock thing, and we were having that conversation about when to unending resolve versus when to trinket and all that stuff. And I have to admit, I still struggle with that. Like do I trinket this or do I not trinket this? Oh shoot, should I have trinket that? And then like, do I wall this or do I not wall that? And I still struggle with that thought and trying to figure out when I'm supposed to be doing my defensives and when I don't need to. I'll be honest, like I seriously struggle. Like I probably throw so many games and die so many times because I'm pushing a button at the wrong time or using the ability when I don't need to, especially on the defensive side. Is there a way like, I mean, obviously play the game, right? But if I'm not seeing it when I'm playing the game, then what's a good way to learn that, to know that was a bad time?
Well, as we discussed that day where we're filming the content, it's good to think about WoW in terms of efficiency. And I think efficiency is this really important concept in PvP. And think of your cooldowns like, power-ups, right? And your goal is to use as many power-ups as possible in a game. We want to be powered up. We want to live, a lot. Typically, you want to prioritize using your smaller, more efficient, lower cooldown defensives first before you rely on those big defensives. So with Warlock is a perfect example. You're always going to Dark Pact first before you press Unending Resolve. One is a 1 minute cooldown, the other is a 3 minute cooldown. So you can press Dark Pact 3 times in the time you can press Unending Resolve once. So you're wanting to kind of squeeze out as much value out of your shorter, more efficient cooldowns first before relying on your big guns, right? And this is why as a mage, it would be weird if you just immediately blocked in the opener, right? If the enemy team pop cooldowns and you block, it's like, well, wait a second. You had Alter Time, you had Shield. Like, why wouldn't you press these first? Like, these are much shorter cooldowns. There's less of an investment. So that's kind of, I think, the general advice for surviving in WoW is rely on the shorter stuff first.
There's also, I suppose, an argument too that if you use your bigger stuff earlier, now Ice Block aside, but like let's say you've got like a 2 minute cooldown or 2.5 minute or 3 minute sort of cooldown, but mostly 2 minute cooldowns. Using your 2 minute cooldown early and then trading the shorter cooldowns means that you put that on a timer and that you get it more during the match potentially. I've heard that as an option as well, but it all really depends really, because people shout at you if you don't use your defensives. Yeah. But realistically speaking, you've used a load of mini ones that you have, like Pact. Like I can Pact at high health, like I can pre-Pact to go, and then I'm down at 5% HP and I'm being and I die. And they go, so why didn't you use walls? And well, I've already traded a cooldown. I've already traded something at that point. Like, do I then have to overlap with wall as well? And then you've just blown through all of that, or could I have just pressed wall there? And that's I think sometimes the scenario where you're kind of like from a strategy POV, and often that's why I call WoW like 5D chess, because realistically, you've got all these different factors of I could press this, but I also could press this, and will that lead to a better outcome in which I've managed my cooldowns far better, so I can use the shorter, more sort of flimsy one for the next kind of half go versus this big one. So I don't know. It's always one of those things. I query it.
Yeah, and I just realized something. I think maybe the advantage I have in this scenario is my main is a healer. And I think when you play healer, you have a really good idea of how much trouble you're actually in when you play DPS. Like when you play healer, you are constantly staring at health bars. So you know how fast like your teammate's health bar will go down when the enhancement shaman presses Doom Winds, for instance. Like you anticipate that spike. And I think that's like a really, this is why I would encourage a lot of people to play healer is because you kind of learn to feel out how much damage is actually incoming. And that way you can kind of make these more efficient defensive trades when you play a DPS. Like, for instance, if I'm playing sub rogue, and I see the enemy team press Doom Winds and Spear and Avatar and all that's jazz into me. It's like, well, that's the easiest evasion of my life. I just instantly know that I'm going to press that button, and I'm going to negate both the enemy DPS's cooldowns at once. And maybe the healer overlaps with me. That's that happens, but at least I can like avoid 100% of their damage pretty easily. And it's because I play a healer, and I know that if my rogue in that situation didn't press evasion, I'd be pissed. I'd be like, come on, bro, like they're popping everything. You need to press something. So I think that healer perspective really carries for defensive trades.
I can see that. That makes sense. And I guess that's the thing is like I also need to. I still don't have all the CDs memorized, so I feel so bad. Like all these different specs, all these different classes, all these different cooldowns. Which ones are like supremely hard hitting versus like meh? Okay, like was that a real lust or was that a mini lust? Was that was that wings plus or was it just I don't know, whatever. Like I'm just throwing stuff out there, but
it's so funny. Like there's lots of criticisms of information overload or information confusion in PvP, right? And it's really funny that there's like some abilities are very well telegraphed with sounds and visuals. Like for instance, in the enhancement shaman, Doomwind's bloodlust, like you hear bloodlust, I don't even need to see I could just listen for bloodlust, and I just pressed his arm. But like other cooldowns are so like they don't have like a clear visual. In some cases they don't even show up on like mini CC, like on any of your add-ons for some reason. Like Blizzard needs to flag individual spells in order to show up on add-ons, and I believe it was Zenith, the Windwalker Monk cooldown, which was one-shotting players at the beginning of the expansion. You couldn't track that with add-ons, but you could track things like Combustion, for instance.
Yeah.
And Combust, of course, like makes the mage like shoot out all these fireballs. Like it's very obvious the mage is pressing a bust, but then Zenith is just like this. I don't even know if it has an animation or a sound. Like it just, the monk maybe glows a little bit green, but
I think that's about it. Yeah. You're like, how was I supposed to see that with my camera zoomed way back so I could see where everybody is? Like, I don't know. So Jarosar needs to learn how to play better and memorize actual spells. Got it. Okay.
Become the weak aura.
Become the weak aura.
Yeah, weak auras were lost so that you could become it. So you could inhabit the weak aura. You make the sounds every time a trap is thrown. You just honk. No, that's it. That's it. There's a trap being thrown, guys. I know because Garrison has honked in the corners. Nice.
From now on, I'm going to be sitting watching AWC on my TV, and I'll just start honking in the living room. My wife will wonder what's wrong with me.
Yeah. So when did we adopt a goose? Where's the goose come from?
I am Canadian.
Very true.
So here's going back to the gearing thing, and I think like obviously gearing is, I'd say, easier than it was. Like ever since Dragonflight, gearing has become somewhat simple, but it is still quite the slog, especially if you're picking up a character and leveling it to max in the middle of a season, or because there's no catch-up mechanics yet, right? So now here's a question, and this came up recently because of those slivers and the new Void Forge that just came live for the PvE players on Tuesday. Now, have you guys even had any slivers? Have you been able to make the whatever the void thing is that you can increase PvP item level to 289 on your weapons and your trinkets? Have you even had that, or are you still struggling to even make enough?
I've not even done that part yet, so no clue.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, I've already upgraded everything. I think if you play a decent amount, like you can. I mean, you don't get them quickly, but you like at least every solo shuffle round, you have a pretty high chance of getting one. So if you play 5 rounds, maybe you do actually guaranteed get one after every solo shuffle. But anyway, you play 5 lobbies, you have the ability to upgrade one piece of gear. It is kind of annoying that you need 5 of them. Like, it seems like a pretty high number for something like that. And like, it's such a weird thing to just introduce sort of randomly in the middle of a season. I don't know. It's like a weird system. I don't know why they did that. Like maybe there were some PvE reasons for it, but they wanted people to log on because it was like a borrowed power FOMO type thing. I have no idea why they even brought that into the game.
Honestly, I think this was they made this decision a long time ago before, like, remember Ice Crown Citadel. The way that they nerfed the raid was they introduced a thing where you could get like a buff from the NPCs at the entrance, where all of a sudden everybody did like 5% more power or something like that. And they do that every so many raids. Sometimes what they do is they actually just nerf the raid. So as the raid progresses, they just nerf the abilities and nerf the damage or whatever until they get enough people through that they're happy with. And then the other one they've started doing is doing something. And so we were having this, I think they did this during the War Within as well, where there was like suddenly a way to increase the item level of the mythic gear, or just like gear in general, and add more item levels to it. And they didn't have anything for PvP at first, which then meant that PvE item levels were going to be best in slot for PvP because they'd have the higher item level and thus better stats. Yeah. So I think this one, when it came around and we found out that they're doing that, I know I'd made some tweets and made some comments to some people, and lo and behold, 12.0.5 launched, and there's, without even like telling anybody, all of a sudden it's like, yeah, there's slivers in this thing that drop out of rated PvP, and it'll increase the PvP item level, almost like as a response so that PvPers didn't feel like they had to go to do Mythic, but there was like no information about it, which was really weird.
The no information thing is so goofy. Like I had no clue that this was coming. Granted, I don't like spam check Wowhead. Like I'm sure if I checked Wowhead a lot, it would be more obvious. But yeah, just the fact, like, I was completely caught off guard by this whole thing, to be honest.
Right. Because I've heard people are still like, they still don't have enough. The RNG is so low for them that they don't even have enough slivers to max out their 3 items, or 4 if you're dual wielding.
I think if you play a decent amount, you should have enough. Like, yeah, you just need to just play. I don't know.
Maybe they're just losing too often. Pardon me?
I just need to play, guys. That's the problem. I haven't played anything, so why would I get slivers?
I think Level Adam was saying that he had some bug characters where he wasn't getting any on some of his tunes, some of his ults. So I don't know.
That's because he plays Paladin. I think that might just genuinely be the reason why.
It's karma.
That's what you get for playing Ret.
No, that's Windwalker. That's Windwalker, Mike.
Yeah.
Anyway.
I don't know. I just found it really weird. Because I'm only doing unrated, so I haven't got any. So eventually I'm going to fall behind. Like, I know I'm going to feel the power difference of somebody that has maxed out Conquest with 298 weapons and trinkets. But how much of a difference is that going to make? I don't know. I'll probably feel like that's the reason, rather than, me not realizing that they popped a CD that I didn't see. Going back to previous conversation there.
Small main stat, isn't it? Like, it's always with these things, a small main stat. So the magnitude of their spells and their damage is just increased ever so slightly. So,
yep.
Realistically, is there going to be much of a difference? Maybe not. But they're just going to do slightly more damage to you, I suppose.
Well, actually, that's a good point. Now, if they have items that have more stamina, and now the stamina boost in PvP is 5% more, that's going to be 5% more of a few points. So they're going to have more health, which is going to make them live that little bit longer than me, right?
That's true. That's also true, yeah. It's a fair thing to say. Like, it all adds up in the end. Like, I agree with, with the sentiment of, like, why are we getting this introduced mid-season? Like, it's a strange thing to do, and definitely not the fix that you'd need. I feel like they do this a lot. Blizzard like to band-aid, like, as a solution, some sort of system that sort of does something. It's like the way that they in season 4 BFA sort of kind of suddenly out of nowhere throw in the vendor for corruption, and like that was a really good thing. That was a positive reaction, but it's like it was almost as if like that was never even a concept to them in the first place. Like why you'd ever launch with corruptions without a vendor was mind-boggling. So there's a lot of stuff, a lot of strange things that they kind of do, and it's a shame.
Well, and just go harp back on that. Then they had the rotation of the items on the vendor because the vendor couldn't hold all the items for some reason. So then you had to wait 3 weeks if you missed out on your item that was best in slot for your character.
All I'll say is, thank God for COVID, because all of us had nothing to do, right? Because if we did, we would be screwed. Like if I had my regular working week where I'm super busy during the day, maybe I don't log in one week or something like that, and I'm suddenly so far behind. There's not even any point queuing. Can you imagine if I had that? That'd be crazy.
Yep. Thank God for COVID.
Yeah, thank God for COVID. Though. Yeah, no offense to anyone. Yeah.
Gamers rejoiced when pandemic? We all have to stay home. Woohoo!
Wait, there's that new virus, the hantavirus or whatever. So maybe WoW is gonna be fixed again.
Maybe
WoW is back, baby. Come on, hantavirus. Like, come on.
In the UK, we had a really good thing, which was that I don't know whether you had this in the US and Canada, but we had something called furlough, which essentially was where basically we just it was just paid time off, and I got 3 months of it, and it was fantastic. I just got full payment, sat there doing nothing, and it was, well, I say doing nothing. It was 8 hours a day of twos for 3 months.
That's just unfortunately I didn't get it because I still had to work. But yes, in Canada we had where the government gave everybody who couldn't work basically. I can't remember what the dollar value was, but it was there were some people where they were making more money sitting at home than they were when they were working.
Yeah,
that was my brother.
Yeah,
good. Yeah, I don't doubt it.
So
especially if you're commuting. But anyway, the point is that we were sort of vaguely jobless, playing a lot, and I think it just doesn't make any sense, and I don't like it because it's like they sort of treat it like, oh, we fixed the game. It's like, no, you haven't. The game is not fixed. And I think, to be honest with you, actually, more than anything, and this is maybe going off on a real sort of maybe rant here, but I think there is clearly something problematic with PvP where the start of the expansion is kind of good in the sense that the first couple of weeks are usually fun. And then suddenly we realize that there is a spec that is just beyond broken. And instead of fixing it, we nerf one of the other specs that aren't normally broken. And then it just becomes this whole massive problem of like, well, there's clearly like a really dominant spec and really dominant, like sort of like maybe 4 specs that are like terrorists. They are proper terrorists of the ladder. Yep. And I think there needs to be a fundamental shift for people in the PvP sort of dev side of things, if there even exists as one, that sort of really focuses on, well, how do we handle this balance going forwards? Because it just is like unbearable, and it's like the third expansion in a row. I feel like it just at some point they just make it unbearable. And I think for me the fix is MMR. They just need to start with MMR rammed in threes in every bracket, not just threes or shuffle, every bracket, so that there is space for people to grow and go and do things.
Yeah,
because it just doesn't make any sense that sort of, you know, the top sort of 50 players are really, really close together and it's all 2-4. It doesn't make any sense. It's like if your like highest XP is like 2.8, 2.9, and suddenly you're hard stuck 2.1.
Yeah.
It doesn't make really any sense. This also makes you feel bad because it's like, well, my highest XP is this, and I can't get back to it because when I got 2.9, I was like top 50. Now, if I go towards top 50, it's impossible. So,
yeah,
I think they need to have a look at it.
The inflation they put in yesterday, or I guess it would have been today for EU, I mean, it's pretty substantial. It seemed like it was about like 100 off the rip. Like by just logging in, your MMR was 100 points higher. But it also feels like right now you don't gain. I'm sorry, you don't lose as much rating or MMR, and you kind of gain a little bit more than you're used to. So it does seem like MMR. I'm pretty optimistic that over the next few weeks we'll actually see a decent amount of rating inflation. But I agree with you on the first point that one of the biggest problems in Midnight so far is like for the first few weeks the expansion, there are just like these specs that were unbelievably broken, like disproportionately. I think the perfect example is Mistweaver. Like if you weren't playing Mistweaver, you were just not gonna have a fun time as a healer. Like you're just gonna lose to every Mistweaver. And then, if it even felt bad from the DPS perspective, it's like, well, if you don't have a Mistweaver on your team, it feels like you're going to lose. And then, there have been some other DPS specs that have been really, really insane. So, yeah, it's tricky. I still am a believer that Blizzard's class design is pretty good these days. Like everything feels pretty competitive, but the problem is like you get one or two specs that are S+ tier, and suddenly the game doesn't feel competitive anymore. And I think that's what players experience for the first few weeks. But I think at least for healer balance, it's a little bit better now. DPS balance, I think, is pretty decent, not great, but it's pretty decent. So I'm pretty optimistic for the rest of the season. But yeah, there's definitely some few hiccups so far.
I'd say normally class balance, like class design in that is really good. This time around, though, with the pruning that happened and then some of the redesigns, there's some stuff that feels janky. Like and I'm talking anecdotally here from what I've heard from other people saying that, but there's some classes that really don't feel good. And
yeah, I really think one of the reasons why Shadow Priest and even to some extent Disc Priest has struggled is you don't have life swap anymore, and that's like a massive ability to lose. That's an ability that like every single game you would use that, and it would maybe save you, right? Mm-hmm. So not having that anymore, it kind of sucks. Also, like Cocoon. Yes.
Sorry.
Also, the way they sort of redesigned, for instance, mage defensives.
Yeah.
Like, of course, mages needed something to change with their defensive kit in both PvP and PvE. Like, they're notoriously considered live lords in like Mythic Plus. They could survive an apocalypse with Alter Time. So Blizzard like removed a lot of the damage reduction stuff from mage defensives, but then turned it all into like invisibility. And to me, it's like 10 times as toxic. Oh my gosh, it is so frustrating, especially if you have two mages on the same team. It's like everyone is spam going invisible like the whole game, and then they're blinking your stuns. Like mage is in definite need of like a redesign, I think. But yeah, I agree. Like in general, like the pruning and the reworks, they just kind of didn't hit the mark for every spec. Like in some cases, I think it worked, and I think like there have been some good quality of life improvements for a lot of specs, but also like fundamentally, a lot of stuff is just broken.
Yeah, I will say this pruning feels better than the last time they pruned, but it's still it's still kind of janky. It's still, and I can't help but wonder, like, I want to say that they're so forward thinking that they understood that they broke it, knowing that come Titan and then the following, like they have this plan of where they want the classes to go. But honestly, I don't think that's the case. I think they're so like at best they're thinking about 12.1, 1.5. There might be somebody that's thinking about Titan and what's going to happen there, but they're not at class design whatsoever. That's just like lore and world building and stuff like that. So I don't know. Anyway,
I'd argue that I think you're both right in the sense that the class design is always good, and I think modern WoW has good class design, and all classes generally feel really good to play. I think the problem is that You've got some classes that have got like, rock to paper, or beat, paper to scissors, or etc. Like kind of like a rock paper scissory kind of feel to them. But then the problem is that there are some classes that have got abilities that make them a Swiss Army knife, and I think rogues and mages are just some of these classes where they didn't need mass invis, they didn't need invis, to be honest.
Nope.
Everything else could probably stay, in my opinion. Maybe a little tuning here and there, but in general, that is the thing that makes them beyond OP, based off of the stuff they have. So they have the ability to just suit any situation. I think rogues are exactly the same. They have too many tools in their arsenal that make them just unbelievably good versus everyone. And I think that's the issue, is that's where there's no balance, because it's not like, okay, you know what? Like, take League, for example. If you play in a lane in League, you play a champion, and that champion more or less has a counter. And it's not necessarily designed that way, but it's just that champion's abilities really, really mess up how you work. And that creates a sort of ecosystem where, okay, you're going into counter. Can you outplay that person through strategy and matchup knowledge? And whereas that doesn't really feel like that when you're playing WoW anymore, because that class is a Swiss Army knife, and no matter what I play, I'm going to suffer into them, especially if I don't have this. For example, I can't wall in and stun.
Yeah.
And so into RMP, that feels miserable, because if I don't pre something, I am dead 100%, unless I got trinket.
Yeah.
And so, you know what? You could argue that is a counter matchup, but I just don't think it makes sense that it counters everything apart from its own mirror. And I think that's been the case for expansions. So if I were to say, like, I think all the classes feel really good. I just think the problem is that because the game is suited or designed with PvE in mind, they feel probably great in Mythic Plus and raids, but actually in PvP we are left with, okay, well, this will kind of work, I guess, but it doesn't, because it's just really miserable.
Yeah.
I don't know if that makes sense, but that's my thoughts on that.
I think you're right. It totally makes sense. It's similar to, like, I'm sure a marksman hunter probably feels really great standing back and firing off a bunch of black arrows and just nuking down a boss. But doing that in a battleground or an arena feels really bad when you're on the receiving end. And in the meantime, the poor hunter, like, they have like 3 buttons maybe, and one is like this massive hit that can either get shut down or they one-shot somebody. But otherwise, I'm pretty sure, I think they're just wet noodling after otherwise, right? Like, the amount of damage that a marksman puts out without black arrow is pretty minimal, if I remember, or from what I heard.
Yeah, I was having this conversation with Jamie recently, and it's like pretty clear that some specs are just not designed with PvP in mind. And like a perfect example is Affliction Warlock.
Mm-hmm.
Like, Affliction Warlock is designed to just plant its feet and cast. And the way they redesigned Unstable Affliction was you wanted to stand there and chain cast UAs over and over and over on the same target.
Yeah.
Well, it's like that might work on a boss pretty easily. And, you can pretty easily tune Affliction on bosses. But that doesn't work in PvP because you're going to get one of two scenarios. Either the Warlock gets trained and does 0 damage and has a miserable time, or the Warlock doesn't get trained and sits there turreting and they just destroy your whole team. Like that. So fundamentally, like a spec like Affliction Warlock is just in this awkward place because they have to. I mean, obviously there's more PvEers than PvPers, so they kind of have to make casts rewarding on the PvE end, and that just makes casts really busted on the PvP end because they have to count for interrupts. Yeah. So it's a mess, I think. And yeah, I don't know. As far as balance is concerned, I was thinking back to the history of the cartel, or what in PvP, not literally, but metaphorically. And I was thinking through every expansion of what was the most broken spec. Mm-hmm. And the expansion where I think that was the hardest to answer was Legion. Legion, if you go back and really think about it, you can't like definitively say like, oh, this was the best spec in the expansion. Like for instance, in TBC, you can easily say that it was Rogue. Like Rogue was the best class. In Wrath, you could pretty definitively say I think that Elemental Shaman was consistently the best. Like of course, Arms Warrior and Holy Pally were good, but I think Ellie was just like pretty banging the entire time. Kata, it was Rogue, you know, et cetera, et cetera. When you get to Legion, it's like, well, what was the best spec? Like, there's a lot of candidates for that. And, you know, lo and behold, Legion had its own unique little system with the stat templates where Blizzard could tune more than just like spells themselves and tune like the stats. Like, you know, sub rogues are OP in Legion. Well, how do they nerf them? They nerf their stamina by like 40% at some point. Like that, I think Legion and the stat templates opened up a lot of opportunities for Blizzard to balance in this way that they hadn't, you know, balanced before. And also, I mean, we were talking about this earlier, leveling and gearing alts. That was such a breeze in Legion because there was basically no gear, you know, like you. Of course, if you queued on a fresh alt, like you'd be at a little bit of a disadvantage, but it wasn't crazy. It was like maybe 6%. So yeah,
there's all that hidden scaling. I think really kind of threw people for a loop though in Legion.
Yeah, but I think Legion was a good expansion for balance and accessibility. You know, compared 100%. To. So I think, you know, coming full circle, if Blizzard wants to, you know, do better at tuning, I think they have to maybe go back to some sort of template-based system. And I think I've been seeing a lot more people advocate for that, like on the forums, on Twitter. It's like, hey, guys, Legion was actually pretty nice for this, you know? And I think that was one reason why a lot of PvPers love the expansion is because, you know, balance is pretty decent. And then gearing was pretty decent. So, yeah, a lot of take inspiration from.
Yeah, I think you make a really good point as well about what's a dominant spec. And I think also something to note that Rogue is dominant in a majority of expansions, and let no Rogue player ever convince you otherwise. They are usually the top dog. But I think in these later expansions, you can easily kind of go, well, it wasn't just Rogue, was it? There's others. Like you could never say there was like a king, like you could do in TBC, or Wrath or Kata. I think even Mop, you know, you kind of, I mean, well, Warlords we all know as Enhanced Shaman. I don't know what you would say for Mop, to be honest, but I think those sort of like earlier expansions, for sure, there was a sort of king who sort of ruled over the rest of the specs, and that's I think that's kind of just goes to show that it doesn't really lie with Blizzard's class design, because I think their class design is good. I just think they have real problem with balancing how strong some specs are in general, and I think they give so much to specific classes. Like, as I said, the Swiss Army knife concept is that actually there are classes and specs that just have too much, so they become almost the sort of the kind of crux of what's going to make you successful in threes and whatever. So yeah, it'd be interesting. I think something like I enjoyed Legion, so I definitely think a Legion based system might be interesting. I just wasn't ever a fan of the scaling. I always found the scaling to be a little bit off-putting, and I think that ended up going forwards as well. They kind of carried that forwards, which ended up in BFA's weird scaling system. I just don't know if a scaling system works out. But I do think creating some form of template that they can then sort of adjust every so often would be really good. But I think their major issue is that they don't really have enough people kind of with quality control and giving them the info. Because if there was a guy that kind of, you know, perhaps on a Twitter account could gather all the information and play the game and get feedback from relevant people or all people, it'd be a really good way to kind of gauge where bouncing should be taken based off of feedback and encouraging it as well. Like, I mean, honestly, if I was Blizzard in their sort of department, I'd be like, okay, cool. If you input this amount of feedback each month, you get this little pennant that you can utilize in Arena. to kind of show that you're supporting it, like something along those lines, to kind of get people to kind of give feedback on how the patch is, or what their feelings and sentiments are. That, I mean, that's what I would do. I think that would be so good, and that kind of information helps make the game better and keeps people invested. So
I don't know. I feel like they already get enough feedback. I think they have that where like there's enough people giving their own. Now, is it the proper feedback? Is it quality feedback? And because there's such a wide swath of player base, right? Like who knows what that feedback is, but they're getting it. I think they're capable of doing the tuning. I think that there's a management issue where the people that do the tuning, the people that do that, are only allowed to do it when they're told to do it. And in the meantime, the rest of us suffer. So until a video goes out and shows something super broken, or somebody that has, thousands or hundreds of thousands of followers and watchers that will just echo chamber whatever they say, if that happens, then they have to respond, because they have to quiet that down. But otherwise, if it's just random stuff inside their own ecosystem, until somebody from management, until Ian or Holly or some other lower tiered manager says, okay, we need to do tuning, let's do this, that it doesn't happen. But I have to admit, I say that, and the flip side, we turn around and we've seen like tuning happen from whatever data sets they have, and there's some pretty wonky stuff there. I can't help but wonder if sometimes that's, there's a bug, but rather than fixing the bug, they're doing some sort of weird tuning to like either buff something that doesn't need to be buffed, or nerfing something that doesn't need to be nerfed because there's a bug there that they see and they know, and they do that just to like counter that bug. I don't know. I'm guessing, but I honestly, I truly believe that there's a management issue there where the devs and the designers are not actually doing regular tuning until they're told to. Like literally, they're fighting to pull their hands out of their pockets, but they're so micromanaged at this point that that's what they're at.
Yeah, maybe so. I think it's interesting for sure. Like an interesting concept that actually it's not just a lack of caring. It's because of just the way the companies run. And I think it's definitely a possibility. I think, not to go into politics or anything, but it's what people often talk about with the NHS. People often blame, in this country at least, the National Health Service. People often blame the big, politicians who've made decisions, but actually in reality, probably a lot of it is down to the way that it's managed in the middle. And I think that's likely in a lot of companies too. There's a problem with middle management.
I also think, just to chime in, that when Blizzard makes changes, it might take a while for those results to really manifest. A really good example is if you look at the average rating of every single melee, you'll never guess what has the lowest average rating right now for melee, at least North America. It's Fury Warrior. And like you think, well, okay, Fury Warriors are actually pretty decent. Like what's going on there? Well, they only recently buffed Fury, and I'm guessing that a lot of people who play Warrior, they kind of just play whatever spec is best. And right now, Arms is still probably better than Fury. Now, if you just like look at the data, you don't really see that Fury Warrior, if you just look at the data, you'd probably assume that Fury Warrior is not good, but it's pretty good, and they just recently buffed it. But still, a lot of people are probably playing Arms because they just prefer to play Arms. So I think like the analytics for WoW PvP aren't great, at least the ones that you and I can see. Like maybe Blizzard has some crazy internal analytics, but it's like that might be a problem too. It's like, well, they make a change, then they need to see how that change affected the outcomes of players on that spec, and that might take more than a simple week, right? Like, okay, like everyone's screaming to get Mistweaver nerfed. Of course, they should nerf it. Then Blizzard does nerf it, and it's like, okay, Mistweaver is still broken. Well, it's like, well, they were probably waiting to see what was happening over that 1 week period after they nerfed it, and maybe those results and perfectly show up yet. So I think that's another like kind of problem that they have.
Oh yeah, there's always the delay from change to results.
Yes.
So, and I'm suspecting that Fury probably won't be picked up until the meta changes where a warrior doesn't need to have Mortal Strike to be effective.
Or like they tune Fury's defensives a little bit so it's like a bit more bulky against melee. Because I think that's like one reason why Arms has been so good compared to Fury is like they both can do a decent amount of damage and they both have Mortal Strike. They both have good mechanics, but Fury tends to get bullied a bit harder by melee for some reason. And if you queue any solo shuffle, you're probably going to have more melee in the lobby than you are casters. So
100%.
Fury's kind of passively at a little bit of a disadvantage there.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's tricky. And that's the other thing too, like the populations of specs. Like it might be truly a range meta and that mages are OP and hunters are OP, but there's a lot of freaking Ret pallies, man. Like there's a lot of people who play Ret, and so they're gonna be in your lobby like no matter what, or warriors or disc priests. Like that's another difficult problem to design around, is that people have preferences to certain specs, and it irritates me when people like open up the ladder and look at representation and they'll be like, oh, look at all these whatever, they're everywhere on the ladder. It's like, well, it's like they're more popular. Like that's of course they're going to show up more. So balance is a tricky thing. It's not just representation, it's not just data, it's everything that a bunch of things coming together, and a lot of that we don't even see.
Exactly. And it's quite possible that the devs have designed something in the tree or somewhere that there's like some counterbalance stuff, but to another spec or whatever, but people just haven't figured it out yet because they're too busy with the cookie cutter, or I quit because I came with the S plus tier and they just killed me. So man, I don't know. I want to do this though. We haven't done this for a long time. What's one thing you would change?
Oh, very good question. Shall I go first, seeing as I've interrupted and interjected? I think the one thing I would change, I think I kind of touched on it lightly before, but I think I would look at reducing the amount of Swiss Army knife. Actually, I'm just going to say it. I would gut Rogue and Mage like fully, because they are just dominant specs, and throughout all of WoW's history, because they are just so flexible. So for me, it would be gut them. I'd make Cheap Shot 1. I'd give them Cheap Shot, and I'd give them Kidney Shot, and I'd remove Mass and Viz. I would remove other things, make it really, really simple. Either your high burst and control, but you can't have all the defenses under the sun. That's my opinion. Anyway.
All right. I love it. I heard Big Moran, I feel like you don't agree with that.
Yeah, I agree in some ways. Like I think Rogue and Mage are just like by design very good classes for PvP because of things like Cheap Shot, because of things like Polymorph, because of Mage Shields. Like there's kind of a lot of moving parts that make Rogues and Mages so good. So yeah, I don't know, it's tricky. I think those are two very difficult classes for Blizzard to balance in their current design.
Yeah.
In PvP. So yeah, I agree with the sentiment that something needs to change.
Judge me on the sentiment, not on the not on the desperation behind that.
But what would you change, Big?
Well, I'm going to take some inspiration from Lika, who just recently put out a tweet, in fact, 15 minutes ago, about having a target dummy that was like dramatically improved. Like he posted this tweet imagine you could click the target dummy and you get this list of options. You could choose its NPC type. You could choose whether it moves. You can choose whether it casts spells, how much health it has, how much damage reduction it has, whether it's getting healed. I think that would be pretty cool to have a better and improved target dummy system, because the current one we have clearly is not that great. And in fact, can give you some misleading information.
All right. Huh. I think what I would do is I would get rid of the Holy Trinity in PvP.
What? Is this some religious argument? Like, what is the Holy Trinity?
The Holy Trinity is tank, healer, DPS. But in PvP, then it becomes healer, DPS, right? Because tanks are nerfed because they don't want them there. But I say just get rid of that. Like, so have it where like a whole different set of abilities. You queue up for PvP, you get a whole different set of abilities, and you're basically role agnostic. You have some abilities that heal, you have some abilities that DPS, but then you don't have this where you're not playing paper, rock, scissors, nuclear weapon against a Swiss Army knife, right? Because not everybody has a Swiss Army. There's nobody that has a Swiss Army knife. There's nobody that has a defensive for everything, or and then that way they're not tuning PVE specs, PVE design to then work in PvP. Because
so
that has never worked.
Like a Project Ascension private server type thing where it's like, it's kind of like build your own specs or something. Like you kind of just have you can choose the abilities you want.
I was thinking more like Plunderstorm, but sure.
Plunderstorm's, interesting you say this. Really quick tangent. I was thinking about like Blizzard. They should probably at some point implement a new PvP mode. Mm-hmm. I think it'd be really cool to have like a hybrid between Plunderstorm and actual WoW. Like imagine you land on a map and it's like your character with its actual abilities, but then you could like find these power-ups on the map. I think that'd be really fun, like I think Blizzard should do that, where they have like a Plunderstorm-esque format, battle royale, but it's your actual character, not some like, 4-button spec, but then you can get these power-ups and do cool things.
So again, that's where I think that no, you need to have the 4-button spec, because then if I land and I have my shaman, my Ellie shaman, and you land, you have your rogue, and Jake lands and he has a hunter, like, or his warrior, like he's probably going to hate life, or one of us is going to hate life. Because somebody's going to have a whole bunch of abilities and the other person is going to have like one defensive and then flop. So I don't know.
It's all interesting ideas, I think, for sure. I think that something radical is maybe what we're looking for across the themes. A radical solution to a consistent problem. So for me, I think it's why was Arena so popular in the first place in Wrath, and kind of figure that one out. And I think that's where they need to look. But as we all know, class design is good. It's just something is different. But very interesting.
All right. Shout outs. Big. Do you have anybody you want to shout out?
Oh, this is a hard question. I'm just going to give a shout out to Venruki because he's cool, and shout out Venruki. That's it.
How about you, Jake?
I am going to shout out Aya, because I massively respect Aya, and I think she always does a really good job when on the desk. The AWC, having seen where she came from, taking over from Rich, who I also thought did a good job, to where she is now, I think it's fantastic. So yeah,
nice. I'm gonna give a shout out to Cherry again, only because she put out some great tweets and insight regarding the lack of balance and the lack of response to PvP player demands for, you know, balancing the RNG on the shards, fixing the MMR and stuff like that, and how we've been crying for stuff as PvP players for weeks, and within 10 hours PvE players had their splinter shards of Void Forge whatever fixed and given 100% drop rate, while we're still scrounging to get some sort of drop rate and fix bugs. So she's very well spoken. She writes really well and presents the arguments and the ideas so eloquently. I just huge respect to her. Speaking of respect, though, big, can you list off where our players can reach us and respect us?
Yes, you can contact us directly on X at technically_PvP, or on Blue Sky at technicallypvp.bluesky.social, or even by an email to technicallypvp@gmail.com. You can also join our discussions on our Discord.
And just to let you know, we are now hosted on Libsyn. A link to the website is in the show notes. Don't forget that the Bonus Roll website has a podcast directory with us and many other great shows at www.bonusroll.gg. This directory also has a review system, so please do head on over there and tell everyone what you think of your favorite shows, including our own.
Indeed. And links for finding us will be in the show notes. I want to thank everyone for listening, and you all have a good night. Good night, everybody.